Hello and welcome to Monday's edition of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast, the flagship show. I am your host, a man with so many red flags you should never engage. It's Tony Anderson, and I am joined by a man who will be forced to engage, so we'll be flagging by the end of it. It is Thom Watt. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hello, I'm very good, thank you very much. Stu and I today, red flags ahoy. Hopefully not of the warning kind, normally when I'm holding one.
You were just enjoying some food there. I got the pleasure of just watching Tom eat his dinner before we started. What we have in there, Tom?
Like my inner 22-year-old is like, I'm having kimchi rice with a fried egg, and it's absolutely delicious with some little sesame seeds on it. It's very, very good. But it's very, it's awful fancy. But that's what you get when you get old.
Kimchi's getting is popular now. Is that like the new sort of like hipster food? You know, gotcha cheng. Every year something else comes that everyone eats. But a lot of the time that happens, I think people have been eating that for a long time. It's just now that suddenly it's been given like prominence.
I'd love to pretend I know about this, but I don't really know about this. It was just what my wife decided we were having for dinner and fancied to look up, and like she's a much better cook than me. So I like we were also watching Omnivore on Apple TV, which is like is great, and it had like a big bit about kimchi, and I was like, I don't really know anything about kimchi, and then lo and behold, that's what we're having for dinner. But anyway, I did not expect.
It's like Alexa. It's like Alexa listening to you in your living
room. I know, anticipating it.
It knew what you wanted, but then you didn't take a drink before we started, even though I offered you the
you offered me a glass of
that's taking me aback. You raw dogged eating your dinner and then starting a podcast, so you're a better man than I am.
Well, we'll see how I fare. I don't have. What have I got? I've got a couple of whiskey miniatures nearby if I do need to clear my throat, but that's about it. So
nothing will look more alky than you rummaging on screen on a YouTube screen, grabbing a miniature, biting the end off it, and chucking it down your throat, and then suddenly being able to pronounce everything perfectly.
I forgot we're actually on screen. Look, you can see here's dinner in progress. Doesn't really show up quite so well on a screen. I can assure you, it's 10 out of 10 delicious.
I saw raw dogging's a word that's coming out more and more, and I saw like on
where
BBC,
are we going?
I saw on BBC there was a BBC article on the main site talking about raw dogging flights, and what it meant was you don't watch or engage with anything. You just sit with nothing.
Why? Why?
Exactly.
Why would anyone do that?
I think it was Erling Haaland posted a thing that he raw dogged a 7-hour flight, but that meant nothing to me because that man is just a robot. So it's just him just staring. That's what someone took a picture of him.
I mean, I can kind of understand like things that are like physical challenges or like, like do this as a challenge that like, so you've got 7 hours in a like flying tin can, and the challenge is to do nothing, not to read a book or watch a film.
Stare and look at the clip. Some people are doing it like a wellness thing, like a challenge. But I'm like, so you're having the best opportunity you could possibly have to engage with culture, like medium culture. Book. Yeah, like people talk about no screen time. You don't have to. You can read you can just read the book. Like you can do something you don't normally do, like just standing and staring. And some people are doing it when they don't go for a piss and they don't go for a walk. So what, you're making yourself unwell? I don't understand what the mindset is in this.
So the bad news is I didn't catch up on the films that I wanted to watch that I wouldn't have seen at the cinema. I haven't had any time to read a book. I've shat myself. But the good news is I can put it on Instagram that I've sat for 7 hours looking like a robot. Wonderful.
Yeah. So this is the world we live in. And talking of raw dogging, Tom, Hearts decided to raw dog going to Dundee for a football match with absolutely no one up for it and no one playing well. And that leads me to ask, is that Dundee midfield of Silla, Cameron and McCowan the best in the bloody Scottish Premiership business?
I think that's a bit of a stretch, but our illustrious colleague Gary Cocker, who sees a lot of Dundee, would claim so. I think there's a good argument that they're the most cohesive unit in the league. I think they're one of the most complementary units in the whole league. I think they make up, what each one of the three brings to the table makes up for where some of the slight deficiencies are elsewhere. And they're a really, really hard. They press well together. They make it really hard for teams to break them down, but they also get forward together at the same time. I think the two alarming parts of that is we kind of know that, and we kind of know that Dundee three they're a really, really good three. Dundee don't have a huge strength and depth, but those three in particular are a really, really good unit. And Hearts seem to have no idea that they were really good, and they would maybe need to do something to compensate for that and to tackle that, because Dundee were good. Don't get me wrong. Dundee were absolutely phenomenal in this game and got their tactics spot on. Scott Tiffany had a phenomenal game. That midfield three, like we said, were really, really good. And Simon Murray hasn't scored yet, but is still chipping in with assists and seems to really fit the system. But Hearts playing a back three and Grant and Devlin in the centre,
with Barry Mackay
just didn't feel like.
Stop trying to make Barry Mackay a thing.
Yeah, and if you're going to make it, like, Barry Mackay needs space. If he's given time and space, or somebody can work around him so that he can absolutely pick a pass. He's a good footballer. He's not robust. He's not particularly good if somebody's man marking him. He's not great if he's closed down quickly. It's not like he can switch back to doing the simple things. He's trying to
because he's the definition of a footballer who does the hard things well. Like that's always been Barry Mackay's thing, and obviously I think a lot historically at Hearts, when he's had his best periods, it's when they put him on the left and he's allowed to drift in because he isn't around the hustle and the bustle. Play him in the centre where, like, Silla's hanging around, and Silla's a relatively limited footballer, but it's really been perfect because they've lost Boateng, who's obviously went over to Hearts, so we might get to. But so Silla's a bit more of a rudimentary player than Boateng. Boateng's a really neat and tidy. He can maybe control a bit of the tempo, whereas Silla, to me, just looks like a spoiler. But he's also fucking massive.
Yes.
And he's got the huge legs where he can get in there. So it's like the worst type of player for Barry Mackay to be put into the centre with, and he just got gobbled up.
Yeah.
He didn't get anywhere near the game. Hearts ended up playing with 10 men. I kind of half understand where he's trying to go when he was playing Vargas really high up on the pitch against Rangers, and he was basically put as the main forward. I thought the reason Mackay's in there is they're looking that there will be space in behind Rangers. You're playing a team in the Old Firm. They will be higher up the park than teams that normally come to Tynecastle. So even though I didn't agree with it, I could kind of
see the logic.
The decision. Yeah, like he's thinking if he gets the ball to Mackay quickly, he'll be able to do those reverse passes that we all know that he's very capable of. Vargas playing on the shoulder, in behind. Vargas sort of got pushed wide a bit in this game. And then Shankland, for all these positives, playing on the shoulder and getting in behind is absolutely not one of them. So sort of like everything that you're seeing, the type of player that he's going to be up against man for man, and who his target's going to be in behind. He's starting, I don't really understand what Mackay's going to bring here. And Hearts have brought in, essentially, give or take, I know Spittle, some would call him a wide player or a number 10, and even though Hearts used him playing in a deeper midfield role when he has been on the pitch, but they basically signed 3 midfielders in Spittle, Danda and Boateng, and then they're still going in with sort of Grant, who looks like he's got talent, but is always flattered to deceive. I think that's a really fair remark on him. Thelin, who I like and I think does really work in a certain system. But then Barry Mackay in there, it's like, why are we going back in time? Why is this team that they put all these players into and they're signing, why are they not allowing it to evolve? And if I wanted to say a few things about Dundee is to really talk up Tony Docherty. I mean, last season he came into it, he's never built a team before personally. And he in one summer managed to put a team that had the real component parts. You mentioned earlier about how that is the most functioning midfield, that makes the most sort of sense out of any team. He does that sort of right away. And he makes the team last season, I would argue, with the most identity that any team in the league had. Not necessarily the best, but the most clear identity and what looked like sort of like the most, like, where you can see exactly how they've coached, you can see how all the component parts move together, players slot into different roles, and they accentuate all their strengths on the pitch together. And then this season, he's had injuries to two of his main centre-halves, so he's moved away from the back three after one half, and then and look what he's got since then. That tells me that how quickly he's able to get his message across, how quickly he's able to get the team playing in a sort of different way, in a different shape. He sort of seemed to have done that overnight with the fact that he'd done that there. So, I mean, you start wondering, what took you so long, Tony? What took you so long to come and give this a bash? Because with Naismith, he caught him off guard. It's as simple as that. Like, Naismith thought they were going to go with a back three. He's went to match up with them. And then what's ended up happening is Naismith's went with a back three. Dundee have went with essentially three forwards. And they've ended up man for man. And they've ended up being able to press them to death because Hearts didn't have a player who could drop in. This is where Boateng helped in the second half. Someone who could come in and take the ball from the defence. There was nobody really able to do that. So then they were able to press the living daylights out of them with the man for man. And they absolutely murdered them in that first half. And that's before we come on to Gerald Taylor. But I'll let you talk for a second.
No, I think that's it. I think the system they set up with, they've kind of 3-2. I'm not quite sure. 3-4-2-1 kind of 2-1, kind of system that was there. If you're playing against another back three, you can totally understand why that might work. The way it transpired with Dundee playing the front three meant where the three centre backs were constantly hassled by the three Dundee forwards. The Hearts midfield three didn't really work and were massively outfought by the Dundee three. So the only place there was any kind of potential overload was out wide. And Gerald Taylor having had an unbelievably good debut against Rangers, where you thought, Jesus Christ, this guy looks like different level. Where have they brought him from? Where have they turned him up? How's he arrived in Scottish football? Went from having like an unbelievably good debut to having an absolutely rotten second game where he was absolutely tortured and was torturous. And I think the only, having seen how it lined it up, the biggest surprise for me was that Naismith didn't change it at any. Like, he didn't change it until half time. Like, the second and third goals come quite like really close to half time, and at that point, 45 minutes, you're like, look, we'll take 1-0, we'll see. But it wasn't like those were a surprise. It was 1-0. Could easily have been 2 fairly quickly afterwards. And there might have been a bit of thinking of, like, we don't want to do anything drastic before half time, before we got a chance to get everyone in and speak to them. But Dundee were all over Hearts, and they couldn't get out there. There were points they couldn't get out their half. And if it wasn't like there was a goal against the run of play, or Hearts were creating half chances and there was an inkling they were going to get back into it the way that they were playing, they were getting absolutely murdered out there. So why there wasn't a change sooner?
And trying to work out with Naismith with the change in the shape. as in on top of trying to match up with Dundee, even though that was never a guarantee, because obviously Dundee changed their shape at half-time in the derby and were miles better. Like they had like a hugely, and again, this is because they probably just don't have with the injuries, they possibly just don't have the personnel to play that back three anymore. And possibly the other idea was because of Taylor's performance, he was possibly thinking in this way is a way of giving Taylor loads of room. And again, with players like Taylor, the way he looked in that Rangers game, he looked like a guy who doesn't necessarily want to link up with a wide player. He actually wants the space to build momentum going up the pitch and dribbling. So maybe someone in that position might actually just get in the way. He can maybe play off a central midfielder and play. So maybe the idea was this shape to get him further up the pitch. But also that left them, like I was talking earlier about the man for man at the back, because the wing-backs want to push forward, they're not really slotted into playing the back five, which meant, as I said, they end up man for man. And as you're saying, Tiffany, it was, again, another pronunciation, Oyagoke's was playing on the right-hand side of the back three for Hearts. He was hooked at half-time. So you've got him and Taylor getting murdered by, and this is with all due respect to Scott Tiffany, who I think is a good player. Not a good sign, though. Like, Tiffany's a jobbing winger. Let's be frank.
Perfectly capable Premier League player, but you're not someone that you would expect a team in Europe challenging for third and challenging for Europe every season to look absolutely fucking terrified of.
Yeah. And like the two of them, and like they having a hook one at half time. I mean, they both should have got hooked at half time. It was Taylor probably done better to not get sent off because he looked like he was on the verge. It was the toys were out the pram, things weren't going his way. He was halving people. He got his. You can see even the own goals because his head's up his arse. He can't sort his feet out. He's all over the place. His head's really hot. You get what it's. We've all been there. We know what it's like in different walks of life where your head just gets really hot and he just can't do anything. He's just running a bit like an arsehole. and he's putting it in the net with these bloody shins. And it's so like he came on, and I suppose Hearts might look at. Was actually quite good that he managed to not get set off, even though I think he made around 3 or 4 fouls in the second half. So I think maybe he was living a relatively charmed life. But again, we're done to finish on Dundee. Yeah, it's just an amazing job he's doing there. The work that he's doing in the transfer market, because Ingram looked better. I thought Larkecki, who ended up going off, even though there's rumours that there was a language barrier and he was actually wanting stretched. He was saying stretched for cramp, and they thought he was, so they brought on the stretcher and just took him off. So that bizarre, because that's what Gary was saying. He was in the hospitality after, and he was absolutely fine. And this is what he said happened. He just wanted stretched off for cramp. And I thought he was excellent, and he was good last week, and he looked like he was really hard tackler. And he looked mobile as left back. And obviously it's a big ask again because he's went and found Beck out of nowhere last season, Dockett, and then to try and do it again, it's always really hard when you've managed to do one. And yes, you're not going to get a guy who's got the attacking prowess in Beck again. That's just not going to happen. But this guy looks really, really good. Looks like a relatively complete sort of fullback that you would want at the level at Dundee. So he's just basically it looks like he's done it again. And I know they're worried about maybe losing McCowan either to Hibs or maybe to a team down south or even Celtic or whatever. But the more you're seeing this, the biggest person to lose would be Tony Docherty getting pinched in bloody January or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think and the hardest thing you can do as a the hardest thing you can do as a manager is have an identity that means that if somebody moves on, you can bring somebody else in who might not be like for like, but will fit what it is you're trying to do. And if you can do that, it makes recruitment much, much easier. It means that you sell on players who might not necessarily be hugely talented, but are doing a really, really specific good job for you and will look much, much better in your teams than they might elsewhere. And I think that's kind of where Dundee have looked like the start of the season. I think the squad is still pretty thin. And as you mentioned, they've almost stumbled into this 4-3-3 formation because, given the injuries to Robertson and Shaughnessy, they've had to rejig the back to get more of their better fit players on the pitch, wherever they might play. But the system absolutely seems to be working, with the caveat that we're very early days. But Dundee look like they're absolutely flying at the moment. They look like
they go to Paradise in a derby when the team's just come up. I know people might say, "Oh, Jim Goodwin's Dundee United, blah blah blah," but I mean that's not an easy start. It's powder keg. You'd want. I think most managers want to avoid it on the opening. Them hurling the flag, full house, and then you're playing Hearts at home. It's not an easy start to the season, and they've had their issues to contend with, and they've dealt with them. I mean, we managed to get through this without even mentioning Cameron, who was superb at everything, including his set pieces. And I think there's a really high ceiling with Cameron, because he keeps getting better and better, and he looks like he can do He looks like he can do everything, because he doesn't seem to mind the dirty part of the game as well. You see him throwing himself about, even though he's relatively slight. So yeah, he's out of contract at the end of the season. So, but if they keep Tony Docherty, who knows? He'll pull more rabbits at the hat, and the Dundee juggernaut will continue. But hopefully Hibs take McCowan and they get loads of injuries and they finish the night. The guy shuts up.
Right, Tom. You know what? Let's move on to your lads. Why the hell not? On to Sunday. I'm just going to do this all completely ragtag all over the shop. And let's move on to Aberdeen, who had a 3-1 victory at Pittodrie with goals from Papagay, Bazayan, and who scored the other one for Aberdeen? Tom,
who was Jamie McGrath.
Jamie McGrath, yeah.
Yeah.
And with a goal back from Olisanya to make it 1-1 in the first half. So I suppose, how has Jimmy Thelin used the squad to start with the momentum?
I think that's been the biggest thing about it. So like he's won his first 6 games, and no Aberdeen manager's ever done that.
But we can caveats, please.
All of those caveats, absolutely. But I think the most impressive thing about it is the guys who were done. Were kind of on their way out last season. Shane Morris, Idrissa Gueye, Esther Sockler was kind of in and out of the team a bit. Decision, it's his first start in a year. Those guys seem to be like completely done. And the fact he's brought them back in and integrated them back into the squad, at the very least, bringing their confidence up. It's probably a bit unfair on Sockler, but having him in with it. But the guys that were out on loan have come back in. They've been brought back into the squad. They've been used, and they look like they've got something to contribute. I still think there's a bit of there's probably a bit more business to be done, and there's still there'll be a large
amount of money to do that with.
There'll be that. But I mean, there's big boots to fill as a number with a number 9, but there is money coming in, and there'll be business to be done. But I think the most impressive thing so far has been settled defence, settled goalkeeper, understands how the midfield needs to work. But the guys that were absolutely done and clearly looked like they had absolutely no future, now look like they've got something to offer. Morris has shown in flashes that he's still very, very raw. Doesn't necessarily have a great end product, but he's very, very quick, and he's very he moves the ball quite like I think he had more. I think he won the ball back more than anyone else on the pitch on Sunday. So there's a bit more to him there. Precision had a good loan spell in Holland and has come back with a bit of momentum too.
Does that show like maybe Thelin? So you set a culture when you do something like that, because managers always come in and they peddle out the same lines about everyone starting from scratch. That is often extremely untrue. And a lot of the guys that weren't involved before and have been thought of as busted flushes remain like that, and they get emptied out. But when you do something like this, I think it does set the culture across everyone in the entire squad that there is an opportunity that if you work and if you play well and if you impress, that you will get in. And that also works with the players that come in when he signs, that's set up, and that you imagine that creates more competition. You don't have any guys going to play in the under 21s and all that type of stuff. And probably it's quite easier to keep everyone happy once you create that that culture, because everyone believes, even when they're out, that, well, obviously there is an opportunity. A guy who had smelt the grass for Aberdeen for a year is coming on and getting on the pitch and getting ready to score goals. But I suppose, I mean, I'm interested, since we haven't seen these guys. I mean, Papa Gay, everyone thought was just like, what a waste of money, £500,000 already away on loan. We didn't think we'd ever, one of those like, oh, we barely got to see you, we barely knew you, and he would be up there. But am I right in thinking, did he play the number 10 role? Was it a 4-2-3-1, or did you go with two up front in this game?
He kind of, I mean, it's a strange kind of formation, because McGrath plays wide on the left nominally, but is not a winger and isn't really a wide midfielder, and is kind of just given license to roam. Morris is playing wide on the right and is much more of a natural winger. Sockler was playing kind of the number 9 with Gay behind him, but it worked largely because Sockler's best with his back to goal and as a kind of battler. He wins a lot of aerial duels. He's quite good on the shoulder, but his hold up play is pretty good. Whereas the best we've seen of Gay so far is he is incredibly strong and he is incredibly fast. It's hard to tell. Like, he had a really good chance where there was Graham Shinney hit a diagonal and he got in behind, and if he just looked up, would have been an easy assist to just roll the ball across. But it was a good bit of control. It was a good bit of physicality with the defender, and he's very, very quick. I'm still not sure that these guys are absolutely the fix, but I think the level that they've come in at and the energy that they've brought, exactly like you say, it does feel like there's competition, and those guys are not coming in and dragging down the overall level of performance.
Just the way you were discussing, like, Papa Gay attributes, it's interesting because that chance comes from him going out. He's actually on the left-hand side when the ball comes in and he cuts in. So that, without being too rudimentary, obviously someone with a lot of strength and a lot of pace can come and play in wide areas. And like you're saying with Jay McGrath, a lot of the time he'll want to come in off the left and occupy the centre. But I think it's quite smart with McGrath because he's not super strong, McGrath. He can get swallowed up if you play him in the number 10 or in the centre midfield. I feel like he could get swallowed up in there, but giving him the free role means that he can use his intelligence and his ability to come in. But if you're having a guy like Gay who can come out, you're giving the fullback a big problem. Do I follow McGrath coming inside, or do I have to deal with Papa Gay? I'm probably going to have to stay because I can't expect my wide midfielder to get back quick enough to deal with Gay because he's so quick. So that situation that creates that could become a feature, if you like, of Aberdeen. They are just looking at the attributes of the players in question.
I think that was it. I mean, Stephen Robinson basically said at the end of the game he didn't think Aberdeen won it, St Mirren lost it. And I think that's not what happened. St Mirren weren't really at the races for the majority of the game for lots of reasons. The European football and all of that. But I think the one element of truth in that is they didn't necessarily. They were making mistakes because they weren't entirely sure what they should be doing. Who should be picking
looked like
up
he was giving Gogic a bit of a hard time.
That was a really good battle. That was a really good battle. Not entirely knowing what to do. I mean, Sean Rooney not knowing entirely what to do with Jamie McGrath, as you said. Like you can show him down the line, and he will go. Like he's not a slouch, but he's not the quickest player in the world. But Jack McKenzie was doubling up, and Gay was dropping into those positions as well. So there was always another alternative ball to it. The one other weapon that I think I saw more in this game that I hadn't seen than I'd ever seen watching Graham Shinney is the great big Graham Shinney heaved pass cross ball, which I think he did maybe 4 times and found the man. Like found the man for that Gay chance, found his man another couple of times, and found precision for the third. So there's definitely you don't want to get. I'm not getting too carried away. Like we say, caveats ahoy. But 2 wins from 2. There's a clear style of football. It looks like it looks like a fairly happy camp. I'm sure there'll be some bodies going out before, not just Majowski. I think there'll be some other bodies going out as well as some more coming in. But fairly happy camp, 6 wins, 6 points from a possible 2 from the 2 games, and the makings of a clearly defined system.
And I think it's interesting. I don't know. It'd be interesting to look back on every season, but it feels like a lot of clubs fancy their squads. There's big changes. Kilmarnock have done it. I know they've got Europe. I know St Mirren are the same, but Ross County have done it as well. There's been like half a team changed over 2 games. That tells me that the clubs like kind of fancy their squads. They feel like they're able to do that. And I don't know if that's just the naivety of early days. You think you've got the players that you can do it, and you've not found out that some of them aren't anywhere near as good as others. But I just thought it was quite interesting. And to be fair, St Mirren, I think going by the highlights, Aberdeen looked better, and going by the stats, looked like St Mirren still were well in the game. And to be fair to them, going to Pittodrie is a hard place to go. It is going to be one of their more difficult games, and coming back off Europe and still making those changes and still. On the face of it, I'm happy for you to tell me different. Looking like they were still pretty competitive and looked like they still could have got something. And Aberdeen had to play well to make that happen. And St Mirren, it does look like more and more trust is going into Olasanya, and he's earning it because I think last season there was that thing because obviously when he was at Arbroath he was rubbish, and then he's came back into St Mirren and nobody could understand how he went from barely getting a sniff at Arbroath to suddenly being a pest at St Mirren and being like probably one of the best attacking subs in terms of output in the league, being like the super sub style of player. But that's carried on into this season again. And now in starting the game, he looked like he was their main outball from watching the highlights. He looked like he caused Aberdeen a lot of problems, and obviously at the goal, Malloy and Rubezic didn't look clever at all trying to deal with Olasanya.
He was a problem. He was a problem throughout, and I think. It's almost going back to that previous point. St Mirren have a really clear identity, and even when they weren't necessarily at the race, I mean, it wasn't like they were all, they're 4 games into their season or whatever it is. It wasn't like they were all out of puff and knackered. But they had made a bunch of changes. But I think they have a clear identity. They have a clear way of playing, and he's such a big part of it. He was a pest. I think he got in behind 3 times, and the one that he, the one that he actually scored from was the one that was the looked like the least likely to actually get in on anything. I think the challenge St Mirren will have this season is as more like he was brilliant in that kind of game. When not many St Mirren players had a particularly great game, but he was really, really good because they generally had 7 or 8 men behind the ball. They were sitting fairly deep, and they had that option as an outball. And he was physical, he was direct, he was living off scraps, and he just never gave anybody a moment's peace. In games where St Mirren aren't going to be. Nobody's seeing them as a side that's going to be at the bottom of the league anymore this season. So teams are not going to be quite as willing to pile onto them and give them the opportunity on the counter-attack. They may have to come up with a more progressive option A, but they've got those options.
Those options are there. And I think, as I said, quite a few teams fancy that that they might have a squad. And but again, you don't know anything at the start of the season because we done Friday's podcast covering the European games, talking up Balcom, who had a great game in Europe the other week, and then straight in here, he's absolutely nowhere for the corner, costing the opening goal. So as Fowler said on that podcast, they've all got deficiencies, and that's why they're here. But
that's true of us too.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think it would be remiss of me to not move on to the other team who is playing in Europe on Thursday night, and that is Kilmarnock, but not for the reasons that you would expect, as St Johnstone delivered a humping to Kilmarnock at Rugby Park that no one really ever does. And it was quite an astounding result. I'd say probably in terms of just result, purely looking at that on paper, I would say that is probably one of the most surprising results I can remember maybe in the last 3 years, when I was just like, St Johnstone are humping Kilmarnock 3-0. So I was absolutely astounded with that one. And I suppose, Tom, is this the start of a new sex at St Johnstone?
It's weird, right? So a couple of weeks ago, it was like St Johnstone are, everyone was, I mean, spoiler alert for when Gary puts these out, but I think maybe two of us collectively don't have St Johnstone at the bottom of the league. I think I might have them 11th. Everyone's generally got them. I mean, my big caveat is I think they'll go down in the relegation playoff. But, everybody is kind of... And I don't think it was entirely unwarranted. Over the summer, the feeling, certainly from reading the fan views on social media, was that there was a bit of a fire sale. All the players that had pass marks from last season were moving on, and the guys that were being brought in weren't maybe quite so good. That felt there was a bit of short-termism and a bit of uncertainty about Craig Levine's job with the change in ownership and things like that. And the first half, from their first game against Aberdeen, they were absolutely pish and were really, really lucky to still be in that game in any way, shape, or form. And then in the last kind of half hour in that, they came into it and they looked a bit brighter from the off. I mean, I'll caveat that with not quite from the off, because they very nearly conceded in about 4 seconds. A clearance being charged down.
Not the only game this weekend where a goal was really scored within 10 seconds from the team that didn't have kickoff.
Yeah, I mean, it nearly. I mean, there were a handful of them from teams that didn't have kickoff. Yeah, but after that, St Johnstone were phenomenal. They were really, really good. I mean, we'll get on to Killie. Killie were not good. All the hallmarks of a Derek McInnes side of being well drilled and not making any defensive mistakes and being, clearing their lines, being like dogged in midfield. There wasn't really any of that. But St Johnstone realised quite early on that if they can get the ball to Benji Kimpona, then he could make things happen. Like, he was a nuisance. He was physical. He would take a hit and keep going. He wins the foul and gets the first yellow card for. I mean, I think both of Joe Wright's bookings in the first 16 minutes were for fouls on him. He completed twice as many dribbles as anybody else on the pitch. I think he had. Yeah, I think just generally all round, he was a nuisance. And they have the makings in Kimpioka and Sidibeh of a real goal threat. And they've
not had that for years.
I mean, saw the stat on one of the St Johnstone fans shared over the weekend of this is the first time in 200 league games that St Johnstone have had a positive goal difference. Apologies to whoever had that stat. It is a phenomenal stat. But, I mean, that is a phenomenally good stat. But it does look like they've got the makings of a front partnership there, and they went. It's an unorthodox 4-4-2 because you don't have it's not a traditional big man, small man, number 9, number 7 kind of relationship, or 10-9, whatever it is. Two quite different sorts of players, but both of them an absolute nuisance. And St Johnstone were very, very disciplined and knew that they had the ball, knew that they had that out ball when they needed to. And I think that first goal, the Adama Sidibeh goal, which is 3 minutes into the game, that's a brilliant finish. That is an absolutely brilliant finish.
He's really good. He's really good at the Sidibeh. Like these hooked finishes, and a lot of his goals come from. It all just feels like being really sharp, being on your toes, like having good agility. Because obviously, a lot of time you get they're decent chances, but they're not absolute stone walls. Because obviously, he plays for St Johnstone. They're normally relatively good on the back foot. And he sort of digs it out with either a lot of pace, a lot of agility, really sharp, and it just begs the question: a guy with that much pace, that much strength, that sharp, that good at finishing, able to get you goals like kind of out of nothing, and he's really clinical. He seems to be really, really clinical. How's it taken this long for a guy with those attributes to get anywhere near really real professional football? It seems bizarre because of the attributes that he has.
I think that there's definitely something in, at a certain level of football, there's not much football played, and if you maybe, for a whole bunch of reasons, you don't have great quality pitches, the ball's in the air more, there's less actual, nobody's properly played, long balls tend to be quite hopeful and reliant on mistakes. There's all of that. But I think and certain players just get dragged to the level that they're playing at, which is why it's so difficult to turn up guys like this who should be playing at a far higher level. And you're like, that seems like a bizarre signing, but they end up being phenomenally good. What I really like about him is he seems to be all about momentum. So it's almost like if you put the ball in behind, he will be moving, and just by virtue of swinging a leg at it or throwing something at it or getting his body in front of defenders, he will get shots away, or he'll win fouls, or it's not like
he got them all over the place. Yeah, because he got them all over the place. That first goal, I think it's like Joe Wright has his body in the right place, and Sidibeh manages to manoeuvre him round and gets him uncomfortable for coming in. And to move on a little bit to Kilmarnock, because for St Johnstone, it's obviously this clean sheet's massive, because you've got like that as we done on the preview, the defence, you're like, oh my God. And they're like, what are we seeing here? And for them to get that, but like I say, the midfield's pretty workmanlike. I know they've got very, very, very high hopes for Essel, and Smith can do a job, and Cammy Robinson managed to find his way back into the team quite quickly. But it's a bit of, I suppose if they can get it right, and Dre Wright looked much better. I mean, Dre Wright had a shot that was like bloody Beckham and Scholes stuff for the corner. Scottish football, we'll call it Latipe and Sosie, to be more in the Scottish football style. But that again, these are things that look ridiculous, but they seem to be able to. Levine managed to wire into something that's become apparent with Kilmarnock. And teams seem to be noticing more about trying to take advantage of that gap between having Armstrong at right wing back and Mayo and right. And that's been getting exploited more and more over sort of recent months towards the end of last season. And again, this, and Sidibeh is a player that would be very adept at that. And it's always a weird one about McInnes is this playing like out and out wingers in Armstrong and Kennedy as wing backs, so it kind of goes against the sort of generally considered ethos of someone like McInnes. And you wonder, but I suppose he just can't change it, because that's where all the goals, the creation of the goals, comes with Armstrong, because it does go against what you would perceive to have him having wing backs who are like proper wingers, like they are, like they're proper wingers. So that's sort of getting found out a bit there, and obviously he can never justify with Joe Wright. I mean, that's a guy whose head's gone, and it never happens before. And it just, why on earth are you behaving this way? But it looked like Essel got involved. I mean, he got a contact for Dre Wright's long throw, and then Finley's hesitating. Lead right doesn't get right, and he flicks it past McCrory. Seems a bit weird. Doesn't really make much sense. A horrible goal to lose. As you said, the hook finish is good from our point of view, but from theirs with that. And Robin McCrory not looking like he was really commanding his box very well. That's something I think Craig Anderson said a lot, that the other goalies like Dennis and stuff that they've had in recent years, that came with time. So maybe the same will happen with Rob McCrory. He took Lewis Mayo off after the red card for Rory McKenzie, so he left the two up there and took the sort of energy out his midfield. So that was maybe a bit of a weird decision. McInnes called the second half effort heroic. I didn't watch it, but I'm just going to say that's not true.
No.
Just I don't believe you. So there we go. And like you said, it was a nice move for St Johnstone for creating the penalty in the situation. Clearly a team that sort of grew in confidence towards the end of it. So who knows what will happen with St Johnstone if Levine, so if he can get that defence set up and keep Sidibeh past August and can Panka up front, then maybe there is enough there to do it. Because if they're solid up there, you think those two are enough of a handful that chance will get a goal in any given game. So maybe I think a lot of the assumption was that Sidibeh would piss off, but that seems to have gone quieter and quieter.
He may yet, and we all may be gloating about how right we were all along.
I don't know. It's like one of those. I don't want. Obviously, I just want Hibs to win, to be clarifying. That's really my main care. But like the Tim's doing this podcast and said that Sidibeh's good to watch. It's a good story. So I'd kind of like just come to Hibs. That's the easiest way to do it. Just come on down, sign for us, because he looks like a smashing player. And how they pull. I think both of them came for the non-league. So the two strikers, and they're both a massive handful. So there we go. Fair play. But let's move on from Kilmarnock.
Where to now?
Let's go to Dingwall. People might say it was a draw, but I watched it fully and I had pretty decent notes for it. So let's talk.
Let's do it.
Do that. So let us go to there. So we've got Ross County, the United, and Tom, let's kick off with a question. Is County's wastefulness in front of goal a concern? That's 28 shots in 2 games, and they haven't got a win.
I mean, with the caveat that it's 2 games in, I think they've had 2 very winnable games, and on paper, they have what looks like a pretty good front 2 where you'd hope there were, you'd hope there's goals in it. I liked the sound of Ronan Hale without knowing a huge amount about him, but I like the sound of the way his career trajectory has been working, and it's like, yeah, he sounds good. Naaman Brophy has never been particularly prolific, but is a good foil.
Well, yeah, the fact that they've got 28 shots on goal, maybe that's just all him.
I mean, that's quite possible. But I think the concern for them, and I think that it was called out, in like they were, with the exception of the first 7 seconds, they were all over Dundee United in that first half, and they had plenty of chances. They missed a penalty. There were half chances in the box if they'd been better, just a bit more composure, a bit better decision making, then they could have been absolutely out of sight. And they are another squad that, I don't think there's any chance they're going to be bothering the top 6, and they're one of maybe 3 or 4 teams that look like they're going to be in and around the relegation spot. And yeah, it's only 2 games into the season, but they've had 2 games so far where they've dominated in terms of like the total number of shots that they've taken. They've had a lot of good chances, and they haven't won either of them. Get to the end of the season, and their season almost certainly will be, if we can hit 34 points or whatever it is, we'll be delighted with that. They could conceivably have 6 of those already so far this season. And I think there is it's a new squad bedding in, and yeah, it always is with Dundee United. And yes, I think Ronan Hale's a really interesting player. I thought he was seeing things and trying things that looked like he was, if not playing at a different level, certainly seeing things at a bit more visionary than those around him, and was trying things. It's just whether or not that's going to be as, it's great if you score one from 35 yards. What would have been even better is maybe just like playing your teammate who's running in behind, or just take a bead and don't lose possession. because it looks great when it goes in, but it must be a little frustrating when it doesn't. Having said that, had he been given the penalty, then it might have been a very different game.
Yeah. I'll talk about Hale for a second, because that was the first time I'd got to watch him for 90 minutes. And I'm the same. When I watched the videos of him when he was playing in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, it's looked like a really fun player, a guy who would try things, maybe a throwback striker to when football was good, Tom. When strikers would try things, and it wasn't filled with robots. But he
pre-raw dog era.
Yeah. He played a bit. He lacks a bit of pace, but he's really direct in terms of when something's on. He takes advantage of it quickly and he makes decisions quickly. And he's not going to be. And I don't mean this in a way like I'm not saying it's like Brophy where he just shoots from everywhere. He likes to shoot early. I mean, you see it with the goal, like he roofs the net. There's no fanning around. There's one where Dundee United give the ball away, and I think it's Babunski gives the ball away in a really bad area in the first half, and Hale gets it, and he manages to shift it past him, and then just strike across the goalie straight away. So I like that. I like that in a striker, and he's good to watch. Is what I would think, and I think he's got the quality, and if they've got guys like Jordan White and stuff around them who maybe take a bit of the dunce, and maybe with Hale, even like Murray, the guy that he's going to be a good finisher, and he's going to get goals out of nothing as well, which is exactly what they're going to need. They made a lot of changes, County again. I think they made 4 or 5 from the week before, and it took me about 10 minutes to work out because I was looking at the lineup, and obviously when you see Allardyce, Greaves, Randall, and Denham all playing, you're thinking, well, that's all central midfield players, very much by trade. And then you think that Ross County quite often play with 3 at the back. And then obviously when I first saw the lineup, I didn't get a chance to probably look at it because Nightingale was already given a chance to me within seconds. That stops me being able to try and work out exactly what's going on. But Dundee United took a lot longer than me, I think, to get to grips with that midfield. It was really narrow. It had a lot of legs in it. It was and it was really I really liked it. I thought it was a bit something different. I mean, it definitely caught them off guard trying to work out who it was, because it had pretty much no one playing in the wide positions. The fullbacks like Harmon and Ifeti, they were pretty exposed, and I think you see the 2 chances Dundee United do create in the first half both come down the left-hand side with Trapanovsky, who Dundee United have done the Bruce Springsteen song for, and they've done that for the whole day. But then we'll have a slag off about the poor creation of chance in Scottish football for the last few years another time. But he got in there beside that, but it really didn't bother them too much. They really made them be able to dominate the midfield, and players were just taking turn to go out into the wide areas. And I looked on Wyscout, and I had Grieve starting on the left, and it had Denham starting on the right. But I mean, for the vast majority of it, you didn't see either of them out there. I mean, more of that game, I saw Denham at least coming off the left, and they were struggling to pick them up because they were just coming in unusual positions, picking up at the centre. Denham, the last 15 minutes of that first half, was getting so much joy, and he was just going where he wanted, and they were struggling to pick it up, and they were creating chances, and you were certain there was going to be a goal coming. And then they got the penalty, which was, again, the Dundee United's perspective, for Walton, not great at all. And he spilled it, but he managed to make up for it. But let's go to. But the Nightingale was also good the rest of the half after that. He didn't let that get him down, which I thought was quite impressive. But if we move over to the Dundee United side, it was Adi Boyega's debut. He came into the back 3, struggled quite a lot, I would say. He was just getting caught on the ball. His passing was poor.
Didn't look particularly mobile.
No, didn't look particularly mobile. Yeah, so I'll be one of those. I wrote my notes down. I'll be popping that in my pocket for later, and I'm going to need some convincing by him, because again, I was hoping when he come in that I was thinking maybe they brought in some pace and some mobility, since their defence is really quite It's immobile. It's really, really fucking slow. So I was assuming when they brought in someone like that late and then got in right away, I thought that must be that, but he was kind of like more of the same, and a lot of arms and legs going everywhere. So I'm not so sure about that. But they did manage to, in the second half, Dundee United, they got to grips with it. They started being much more aggressive. They pushed Sybil a lot further on. They started taking a lot more risks. And Sybil was getting in the box a lot. He was getting a lot of shots. And then the goal is lovely. And like, it's poor defending, but Ferry, who was outstanding in the second half, I thought, out on the left-hand side, and probably the main reason that they got back into it. He, as I said, they just realised that if they're playing such a narrow midfield, we should be pushing these fullbacks right up the park, and they started taking more risks and pressing it. And Ferry was getting loads of joy, getting loads of chances. It's a lovely little finish from Babunski, and it does look like the Babunski and Trapanovsky are just good pickups. I'm not saying they're going to be the world beaters, but they've got a nice bit of quality, a bit more quality than the rest of the Dundee United players have, and it seems like they were. They've
got some football in them, I think.
Yeah,
they've got
some football, and they're nice to watch. But Dundee United, they'll be absolutely spewing about the end of that game. I think they both going for the same ball. I think it's Gallagher and possibly Holt going for the exact same ball, and then they managed to get out there. It's a nice cross for Samuel. He picks him out just on the turn, and like I said, Hale, there's just no fucking around. That ball is getting absolutely roofed. And County definitely deserved something from that game.
I think that ending and the way that the equaliser at the end was, you could see that earlier in the game, that one of the issues that very early days, one of the early issues that you can see with Dundee United and the way that they've set up with the back three and quite a deep lying defence, is there are a lot of players getting on top of each other. You know, they're not really a side that are, when they break with players carrying the ball rather than longer passes or, you know, trying to go left to right. And there were a couple of times that mistakes in the first half were from 3 or 4 players, in some cases 3 or 4 players in the same, you know, 5 square meters, and being taken out with a couple of simple passes. So I think there's still a little bit of that, and part of that is new squads, getting to know each other, all of that. But it was a really bad goal to lose. I mean, it comes from a goal kick. You know, it's 5 minutes into injury time. Just win the second ball. Win the first ball. If you can't win the first ball, win the second ball. Just get it back that way, and you're golden. But you can't. I mean, you can't really argue with the Ross County deserve a draw. You know, absolutely. I think over the piece, they would be very disappointed if they weren't at least a goal ahead at halftime. Having said that, where does the Miller-Thompson miss rank on the worst misses you've ever seen? Is it in the top 5?
It was really hopeless.
It was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad
really,
one. It gets worse as you see it as well.
Because Vandersen, is it? That I think he does quite well, because a lot of players would panic and just want to shoot in that mode. I don't think it would have went in. To be fair, that was the only thing he fucking done. He was very anonymous, and I'm like, another player that's come from the Dutch second division. I'm getting big Dylan Venti vibes after seeing him a couple of times, of just like, they don't have any attributes. They're called strikers and I see them on the pitch, but I just don't see them actually do anything. But hey, that's just what I saw in that game. But I think we should move on. I think it's time to talk about the Old Firm. And why don't we go for Ibrox is probably a bit more interesting in terms of how Motherwell managed to get into that game. Czerny, after a brilliant assist, after a poor second half performance in Poland during the week, he managed to dig out an assist in the last minute with an absolutely brilliant ball in, and he followed it up with his first start at home, which would be at Hampden at this time. And he managed to pop in a brilliant goal. Is he a cult hero in the making, Tom?
I think so. I think he's...
Or he's just going to be too good to be a cult hero. Is that possible?
I mean, but yeah. I on the on the basis of the early start, one of the things that separates like cult heroes and genuine legends are the company you keep, and there are far worse players. There's some players that are like club legends who, if they played in some of the other teams that kicked around, and I'm not pointing any fingers here, but I'm sure you can name a couple. I'm sure I could too, who were maybe who were good players and were part of great teams or part of really, really good teams, and they're like seen as club legends because they were there at the time. But there are other ones who are much better than those around them, who aren't playing in the world-beating greatest 11s that a club might particularly have, so they probably only get cult status. I think that's where Czerny at the moment is. He looks like, I mean, when he signed, and we chatted on the Patreon, Craig Anderson and I, about how he looks like probably the only signing so far for Rangers this summer where you're like, that looks like not just a good pickup for them, that looks like if Celtic had signed him, you'd be like, yeah, that
he's probably going to get a game as well.
Czech international, had a good career in Holland, had a pretty good career in the Bundesliga. He looks like a pretty good pickup.
He passes all of Ewan Taylor detective checks that he does on every.
Passes his background checks, and Ewan Taylor private detective, going through his bins and checking his numbers and making sure that his spider graphs the same as But he and I think he doesn't just look like already that once he gets up to speed, he's going to be a menace. The flip of it was the minute he went off, Motherwell immediately came back into the game. And he wasn't just, I mean, from what I had seen of the kind of his highlight reels and what he does best, is he's a very, very mobile, very quick winger, but not somebody who always goes down the line. He can come inside. His decision making looks pretty good. I think that's quite. It's not rare, but it's not unusual.
Of a winger.
Yeah, I mean, lots of wingers will get to the byline, put the ball in the box. That's kind of what you're. If you can do that, you're 2/3 of the way there. He's much more measured. Sometimes he goes, sometimes he drives, sometimes he comes inside. Sometimes he looks like his decision making is pretty good. But on that the game on Saturday, he looked much more like he was he was dropping quite deep. He was dropping to the edge of the box. He was picking things up. He was making things happen. I mean, his pass for Scott Wright's one that was cleared off the line was a phenomenally good pass for just lovely weight on the pass and just sees it. He looks like.
We didn't even, talking of great passes, we didn't even mention Graham Shinnie's for Poseidon's goal, which is an outrageous ball.
Oh no, I did. I got it in. Don't worry, I got it in.
Thank God. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd be disappointed for a guy to be able to do a reverse cross from 35 yards on the spin and it ends up my back post and the ball's going in. But it is a very good ball. And yeah, you're right. Czerny is very similar for Scott Wright.
But he had that. It was a lovely bit of. It was a lovely weight to the pass, and obviously he gets the goal. It was a really nice finish. But I think the flip side of that, and what the kind of story of the game is, that Rangers absolutely battered Motherwell, and Motherwell did everything that you would hope you would want to do in a game against the Old Firm, and just like hang in there. Your goalkeeper has a pretty good game. You make a couple of really, really good saves, and you hang in, and you get a bit of luck, and then you have chances at the end.
And they've done that with like half a team missing. Yeah. And I think that'll be the thing for Motherwell. I mean, some of them might be going there. I mean, well, points dropped. Like say there was points to maybe be had there, but there's more positives to take out of that. Is that they were able to be robust and hang on. And I mean, they even lost their big striker on the stroke of half time, and they're really getting down to the bare bones already. And I mean, I thought I saw. Miller was playing, and I thought he was maybe injured as well, and I was worried that they were forcing him onto the pitch. But obviously he came through it unscathed. But like, you're looking at the team like, Jesus, that's not good. And if they manage to dig out dig out a performance, they've not been embarrassed, they could have come away with something, and you come away feeling good about yourself, and the fans will feel good about themselves. But Rangers, again, it's just going to take a lot more convincing, man, that this team's like worth giving a fuck about, and are going to have any sort of impact on any of, never mind, I mean, they're not going to win the league. I mean, that's just as simple as that. But I mean, even for them to have any sort of impact in any of the competitions to stop Celtic, maybe, as I say, picking up a League Cup or a Scottish Cup, to stop Celtic going on a run where they get the fucking octagon treble or whatever it is that whatever it is that Callum McGregor's retired for, to achieve at Celtic. And talking of Callum McGregor, let's move to Easter Road, where Celtic
to you, Tony.
defeated Hibernian by 2-0, with the goals from Nicholas Kuhn and a 25-yarder from Callum McGregor right into the top corner. And unfortunately for Hibs, they managed to gift a goal within 3 minutes of this. But before I maybe go on talking about Hibs, maybe I'll just ask you a quick question, Tom. I mean, Celtic already look better than last season, despite not really adding anything to the squad. And sort of like the sort of Nicholas Kuhn seems to have moved from decent winger, maybe wanting a bit more in, to becoming what's starting to look more and more like a key man. So, I mean, how do you think Celtic have improved despite not adding really anything so far?
I think this is the thing that's most ominous, is Celtic won the league last season very comfortably, ultimately very comfortably, but at various points throughout that last season, they looked vulnerable, and you got the sense that Brendan Rodgers wasn't entirely thrilled with the way things were going. You got the sense that he was getting irked with things, and it just wasn't quite what he'd signed up for, and he just wasn't going all his own way. And as somebody who does not support Celtic and would very much like for there to be a chance of silverware for my club this season, I did kind of think, that's great. They've not added anybody to their squad.
They're sleeping at the wheel.
Almost certainly going to. Yeah, I mean, so they've signed Kasper Schmeichel, and he's probably an upgrade on Joe Hart. But your Celtic goalkeeper, how many? What difference is really that going to make in the league anyway? You don't face that many shots anyway, and you're probably going to sell Matt O'Reilly, who is by far and away the best player in the league, and there's not necessarily any sign of anyone coming in. And they've started the season and absolutely blitzed Kilmarnock. And I think it's fair to say the 2-0, like, Hibs had their chances and came back into it in the second half a little bit. But they could Celtic could have been absolutely out of sight. I think so. We've had 60 shots so far this season in 2 games. Now, to give that some context, I think Livy had 370 in the whole of last season, and Celtic have had 60 in 2 games. And guys like Kuhn look like they've got. I mean, he had the most successful dribbles on the pitch. He had the most. He won possession back the most. I think he only gave the ball away once in the entire game. And he just looks like he's found a whole another level. I think Callum McGregor is not exactly an old man. Only focusing on Celtic is going to be a pain in the arse for the rest of Scottish football. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to sit here and collect my.
You might play in the World Cup. You could go to the US. That's more fun. Sure, you've done everything you're going to do. Mean, but anyway, let's not get too bogged down.
They look ominous, and I think if they're going to add to their the main thing is, I think they've had a summer playing together. They've had time playing together. They've had time for Rodgers to kind of get it all.
This is what I was going to say, because Rodgers came in and it was still a bit of a cloud over it. There was still a bit of mistrust involved in it. And they were also losing sort of like a hero manager who'd also brought in a lot of the best players who loved playing for him. So there's an awkward sort of changeover, if you like, that stops them. But now it's like everyone's settled. The fans are happy that, you know, Rodgers is there. He's got his feet under the table properly. And everyone seems a bit more comfortable with the whole setup. And now they've had a summer to work properly together. And then you're like, right, and you can see it was more of a Rodgers team. There's the things I like Rodgers teams is that they kind of go for your throat. Rodgers teams, like they go direct if it's there. You know, they aren't scared to do that. They dominate game. I mean, the opening goals really direct. I mean, Hibs have got the ball in quite a dangerous area with Miko, and then eventually it gets forward, and O'Reilly just plays a really sort of rudimentary, because it's on, rudimentary lobbed instep pass into Kyogo, because Hibs have got themselves caught too far up. And then Kyogo picks it up, and no one engages him. No one marks him, and then no one engages him. He's just sort of shifting the ball more and more and more into an area where he can shoot. And Miller's not bothering. Ekpiteta's not bothering. It's like someone, and then he gets the shot away, and the keeper makes a decent shave, and he pushes it away. I mean, I can't blame him for that. He gets out of danger, and then nobody's even fucking followed up. So you're sitting off, and then no one's followed up there. And the ball goes, and then James Forrest manages to tap, and Kuhn gets the easiest. So, and then Celtic really could have just slaughtered Hibs from there. The second goal comes, Hibs, 4 players drawn over towards the ball. You get a good clip of it on Sportscene when you get the view from the west stand. So you see all the Hibs players that are slowly drawn towards Kuhn having the ball. And they all keep it, and eventually you just see McGregor just stations himself, and nobody's anywhere near it. And it's a great shot, but Celtic player being able to just roll the ball at his feet in that area and have no one anywhere near him. I mean, there's one job, you have to make it hard. You have to make it hard when you play Celtic, and just giving them all that, guys of that quality, if they just get free to go for it, then they take it. And Celtic have so many chances after that, even into the second half, that I know people said Hibs were better, but the first 10 minutes of that as well, before the hour mark, Celtic could have hit the post again. They had one-on-one chances. It could have been a hell of a lot worse. And to look at it from...
Is there any optimism from a Hibs point of view?
Yeah, I was worried
coming on.
I was worried about Ekpiteta's performance for Hibs. Again, I was saying similar to the Dundee United player. It's just a lot of arms and legs everywhere. Doesn't look very competent on the football. He looks like he's always ready to make a mistake. You know, players just, they give that vibe off. He's certainly an improvement in the air from Rocky, but I'm to be convinced that he's an improvement on Rocky in any other part of his game. But again, I hate to do that so early to players. But again, like I said, there was a notes being taken on my hand, popped in and saying, I'll be coming back to you. I have my eye on you.
We're here to jump to conclusions. There's 2 games in. That's what this is all about. Jump to conclusions. Do come back and remind us of the stupid shit that we said 2 games in. But we're going to jump to some serious conclusions.
Conclusions, yeah. So, Hibs midfield is just abysmal, and it's always atrocious. It's a position in the part that's needed work for ages. I like Joe Newell. He had a really poor game. I just always feel like Joe Newell at his best. He stands out. He's like quite warrior-like. He can ball carry. But I always feel like he needs to have the bit between his teeth. Joe Newell has to have his back up almost to play well. And then Levitt was playing at fucking training pace, as is always the case. And he didn't have. And he had the thing about Levitt in those games. You think because you get turnovers against Celtic because they commit men over. So the idea is that you will get space in behind you probably don't always get. So maybe the idea of a player like Levitt is that his passing range means you can take care of that. But he was absolutely hopeless, as was Martin Boyle, who was leaving the ball behind when he was dribbling again. It was not a lot to go on. Rudy Molotnikov, again, looked really good, and that was playing against the best team in Scotland. He stood up physically to it, and he was ball carrying, and he was taking the ball in tight areas. And these are the things, when you talk about a young player, they're the bits that really impress you. It's more about responsibility taken. As an 18-year-old, he was getting battered about a bit, and he stood up to it. He was willing to dribble. He was taking the ball. He was playing nice passes. And you're like, right, that's him playing at the peak of Scottish football at 18, and he's actually a standout for his side. That's maybe there's a bit of because everyone else is shit. Don't get me wrong, but he's certainly coping. And at 18, that's great to see. And yeah, and finally, Hibs after the hour did start to put some stuff together. It was like the last chance, like Celtic. Hibs created a great chance. the one when Boyle cut across, and then Celtic created the chance right after with 2 passes over the top of it, again direct, like the one that over the top of his head, and it was 1-on-1, and the keeper made a save. But yeah, Bowie came on, and for all the things I've read from the Northampton fans, he strikes me as someone he's just built for it, built for this league, and that's what I'm hoping. And then big thing I'm hoping about Bowie is that he's had so many games for his age. He's like well over 100 games for a guy that's 20-year-old, and he's had to pay the price of playing out wide because he's younger a bit. He hasn't got to play in his centre-forward position that he wants to. But he went to League Two. It didn't look like he had an amazing season numbers-wise. But then when he moved up a league and he was a year older, those numbers improved exponentially. And Northampton fans all seemed to love him, wanted to stay. Other clubs wanted him down there. And the way he was talking, he likes to batter people a bit. He wants the physical side. He's big. He's powerful. He's strong. He looks like he's got a bit of cockiness about him. And the best thing I'm taking for this game, Tom, is that against the best defender in this country.
He bullied Cameron Carver.
Yeah, right away. He was only on the pitch for 50 minutes and he'd done that right away and nearly scored from like an impossible angle. You're like, right, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. And arguably, take out that game that the striker just signed for 600 grand, who's young, the hope is that we're getting him at the time that he's ready to kind of explode. So that's kind of the way, because I read, and a lot of Northampton fans, that's what they were saying. He's so good to watch. He's really strong. He gives you everything you want. He's fast. He's an absolute nightmare. But obviously, he just needs to refine. But as you would expect for a player. And they were all saying they were thinking that this season would be the one where it happens. So my hope is that we're getting him on that tip, that he's got 100 games under his belt. And that's what I was trying to say. Other people, your Gary O'Connors, your Derek Riordans, all these kind of guys, they didn't have any of goals by this time. It was all about when they were like 20, like where they came into it. So you're hoping that Bowie's just streets ahead of the development they are.
We're always a wee bit biased as well to players that, like, if they're coming through and they're making their debuts at like 19, 20, nobody expects them to get a bunch of goals. If they're coming from another league and they're like, wait a minute, he's not got any. His numbers are not great yet. He was born in 2003. Terrifying.
So him battering Carter Vickers doing that, I was like, right, that piqued my interest. So I'm hoping that we get to see a bit more of Bowie and hopefully see him in the roles that he wants to play, and hopefully him sign Luke McCowan and hopefully piece together that midfield. And it's a lot of hope rather than expectation from Bama, because we've had 5 years of this sort of setup at Hibs, and it's not worked once. So there you go.
That's what we're here for. Jumping to conclusions and wild hope and expectations. There's this week's title.
There you go. And thank you, Tom, for giving me the title right as we finish. If you could message that to Craig Fowler and tell him to post this and edit it, and hopefully he gets a fright when Gary turns up. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Everyone, if you would like to hear more from our team of men and women talking about Scottish football, we do have Patreon. So patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. There is always just bundles and bundles and bundles of content that just go up on there. Not good content that's up on there constantly, because we all bloody love Scottish football, and if you love it as well, you should give us £7 and a month and listen to more of it. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon.